Welcome. This video and this lecture advances the facts that the Genesis claim that man was created before woman is an evil satanic teaching, now subsequently installed as divine law in human psyche and governing the lives of roughly 4 billion people. The Genesis story that still rules the world. Once you accept the theme that Adam was created first before Eve, you are normalizing gender hierarchy and subordination. You are also psychologically suffering from alienation and shame. You are suppressing the shadow feminine consciousness in you and causing impairment of intimate relationships via blame. You are rationalizing the exploitative dominance of the patriarchal system. And last but not least, you are internalizing fear of the knowledge and the truth of the feminine power. Yet, statistically, more women go to church, to the mosque, and to the synagogue. Why? If they had the power. The psychological earth suit, which is our body, has been tailored by divine inspired texts that fit a narrative of inherent defects and secondary status of women by anchoring the origin of sin in the female and the origin of authority in the male. The masters who scripted these books installed a recursive loop of submission that operates even in the absence of a physical whip. How did this happen? When? If you want to learn more, you have to apply Afro-cosmic applied metaphysics, ACAM, and its lens to the biological data, which we are going to do today. But we want to introduce the scripts first. You have to read 1 Timothy 2, 11, 15, that says women should be quiet and learn in submission and should not teach men or assume authority, and that they must be quiet because Adam was formed first and Eve was formed afterwards, and that Adam did not sin, but it was the woman that sinned. You also have to understand the Quran, Surah 434, that says, your woman, you can ignore them in bed or beat them up if they make any infraction. The forensic reversal that we witness today when we understand the mathematic alignment, the truth of how life actually assembles itself, contradicts the master narrative at every functional layer. The sin of deception and the biological template are very clear. In the Bible, you find that there are two creation stories that contradict each other. One says mankind was created in God's image, male and female, they were created. The other one says the man was created first. And then afterwards, God realized that the man was alone. It is not good for men to be alone. And then made a helper suitable for him, which puts Eve as a helper for men. But when you look scientific area, scientific studies and experiments, you realize that the woman is original by light years. The journal Nature published a paper by Rebecca Kahn, Mark Stoneking, and Alan Wilson around 1987 using mitochondrial DNA, genetic material transmitted exclusively through the maternal line. They traced all living human beings to a single female ancestor living in sub-Saharan Africa approximately 300,000 years ago. The press doesn't make the story whole here. The press call her mitochondrial Eve. That's a misnomer. She's not Eve. It is only scientifically proved now that the black woman is the only organism that possesses the mitochondrial DNA that has all the variations possible for every different kind of human being on this earth. When the DNA of a black woman mutates, then all other types of human beings come about. You can do your research on this topic. It is true. They call this Eve, but it is only the black woman that has that capacity. Now, what we know is that females have chromosomes that they call XX and the males XY. So, what has been proved by science, beyond any reasonable doubt, is that in the womb, every human begins as a female. Hence, men or males have undeveloped secondary appendages like undeveloped boobs. because of the sudden appearance of a hormone known as the SRY at roughly 6 to 7 weeks of gestation. If that hormone does not appear, that zygote continues to form as a female. And this is important to understand, because we now need to know what happened. Where did this SRY come from? The book that I'm writing now, that will be finished perhaps in the next 3 or 4 months, is going to deal with this in a manner and in a way that even the top level scientists will be amazed. The evidence are tips. All truth is in the open. It's very clear. So, the biological default, which is the primary architecture, the earthsuit, the body that we have, the physical vessel that we have, disagrees with the scripts, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah. Because in the womb, we realize a quantum system. In early gestation, the human body does not wait for a male instruction to begin. After fertilization, the default template is feminine. This is the mahatic alignment of nature. First move. Scientists have done a lot of researches on this. Just evidence proves that. Just pioneering experiments showed that there is a switch thrower. If it is removed, the body proceeds in its foundational female form. The female requires no intervention to be. But the male requires an override switch to come about. That is the SRY interruption. In Koopman, et al. And others, these SRY transgenic experiments that were done according to here research around 1991, the paper that they wrote, they inserted a single SRY into chromosomally female XX mouse embryos. And that was sufficient enough to produce anatomically male mouse. Therefore, which means that the program that was imposed in on any form that was already in progress changed that. So how can God, who created everything, tell us that Adam was the first?
The Genesis narrative,
Story,
therefore, not a biological
is clear
record.
that it is
Modern
a prototype
genomics traces humanity
of something that came about during the Bronze Age Levantine contest to remove the feminine aspect. We know that in Ura Namua, 2100 BCE, Lipit Ishtar, Hammurabi's laws, all these documents, clearly administrative instruments that were used to emerge and create the masculine and patriarchal authority, was competing against what our ancestors had shown already, which was already there during that time, the same period. The great goddess traditions, Inanna, Ishtar in Mesopotamia or Sumeria, Asherah in Canaan or Ashura in Canaan, Hathor, Isisu, Nephthys, Mahati in Africa or south of Africa in Hamid. The Second Temple period after the Babylonian exile brought back this Babylonian philosophy and ideology. It was then codified in the Second Temple, writing by the prophet, by the scribe Ezra, against the understanding and knowledge that Moses was educated in the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in speech and in actions, Acts 7:22, whereby he knew that the foundational frequency that was then taught in the place that he grew up in Hamid was a frequency calibrated on the feminine as the primary conduit of power, where you had Mahati, the female primal goddess, in Kamitian forensics with Isisu, who gave the authority for a male to sit on the throne. Literally, the personification of Isisu, the king only becomes an operator of reality by sitting in her lap. This is the truth. So our ancestors knew. You can look at this from many angles and you find an identity that appears in terms of the governing gap that the masters exploited. The textual exploitation, derivative narrative overlay came through Ezra's reduction from Babylonian themes, a temple hierarchy, authority governance, administrative scrolls, and that was the act of Isfet, the distortion of the natural sequence to engineer an authority. And that was done in a place of the SRY rewrite. It's like they knew, it's like something inspired them to know that at this point, the male accident must be used to override the feminine priority as an external governance system. And the biological first, that's what we know. It's feminine because it is the amniotic fluids, which is the new. And it comes out from infinite possibilities and potential. And if there is XXX, it continues. But if the other one comes in, it becomes a male. That's the intervention. That's what I was saying. So, when you remove these books, your liberation comes in your psyche. It restores the woman from a sinner or companion to an actual status as the primary architecture and the wave collapser of the human lineage. We have identified the biological first. You have removed the governing gap. And then now you are with the primordial field, the new, and then now you can say you are free. If you do not do that, this gene that appears will continue to be your master and to rule you. And therefore you write and read and believe scripts like 1 Corinthians 11:4 that says every man should pray or prophesy with his head uncovered. Because if he covers his head, it dishonors his head. That every woman must cover herself when she prays or prophesies. That when a woman gives birth to a baby boy, she's unclean only 7 days. But if it's a girl, she's unclean for 14 days. And also unclean for the next 66 days instead of 33 days. Read the following from 1 Corinthians 11:3. But I want you to know that the head of every man is Christ, who never existed anyway. And the head of woman is man. The head of Christ is God. So what are you saying? Genesis, Adam, first narrative, and African mother-centered cosmologies represent different collapse events, different observer intent configurations, collapsing potential into story. One does not get it wrong. It collapses a different waveform. But when a collapse narrative contradicts observable biological continuity and severs people from practices that honor the maternal source, like the inkomo yoshanga, it creates aesthetic static, entropic noise, manifesting as guilty, disconnection, and ancestral dissonance. That's why when we get married, when we marry, you have to give the mother a cow, specifically mombe yo mai, inkomo yohlanga. This cow is not payment for the bride. Lobola cattle are a token of appreciation for children born by that woman. The mother's cow anchors that feminine energy, which is totemic in the lineage continuity that you are going to produce. Mami wata. Ancient people knew this, and because the black woman was the first, that's why there was an ancient worship of the African woman. The X chromosome is the primordial library genetically. The X chromosome is a massive, robust repository containing approximately 900 to 1,000 genes, essentially useful for general survival, brain development, and immune function. It is the ancient library. You want to call it the Akashic record, you could. That every human being, regardless of sex, must possess to exist. It's in you. In contrast, now listen to this one. The Y chromosome is a highly specialized, stripped down switch containing only about 55 genes. You can't compare 900 to 55. It cannot sustain life. An embryo with only a Y chromosome, or Y, is non-viable and will not collapse into material reality. This proves that the Y is a textual second, an additive calibration, while the X is the biological first. So the rib narrative is a total fallacy. When you know the chromosomal priority, the text suggests the female is a spare part, like Genesis 2:21 to 23, but genetics shows the X chromosome is the essential ancient library of the species, while the Y chromosome is a specialized one that cannot sustain life. This is because when you know our ancient Afro-cosmic metaphysics, you will also know genetics. There's nothing that will go against genetics. The Bronze Age Levantine's coup d'etat dethroned the mother goddess. It is not a biological issue here, but is fact fighting Isisu. Since women are oppressed by men through structural, social, and individual mechanisms, notably patriarchy, which often results in domestic violence, subtle violence, sexual violence, economic inequality, and limited bodily autonomy, it affects every conscious human in an emphatic way, because all human beings begin in the womb as female. Think about that. To be totally free, to remove thy consciousness from the government of these books and religions and spiritualities, you need to liberate your psyche. It will restore your feminine energy. It doesn't mean you effeminize your malehood now. And now you know the woman is not a sinner, but more than a companion. She carries the primary architecture and the wave collapser of the human lineage. What are you going to do? If you want to learn what to do, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us using this email. Thank you for watching, for liking, for subscribing, commenting, and also for sharing this video. I'm your manager, Topi Priest Rabbi LM Mujaganja, saying till we meet again, remember, who is the primary architecture and the wave collapser of the human lineage? Your mother. Amen.